What's up, guys? Frank here with the one and only Bobby Blitz of Overkill, one of the hardest working bands in the heavy metal history, bringing us a brand new record titled Scorch out this April. Bobby, it's always great to see you, man.
Good to see you, Frank.
We were just talking about, the old days, and it's weird. I think the first time I ever saw Overkill live was during the WFO time, and it was at L'Amour's in Brooklyn.
WFO tour that was 94. 94. That had to be, was that the new L'Amour's when they had the entrance on 62nd?
Right.
60 and on 61st?
Right, yeah. So they and sometimes they would actually have like a joined type thing where they had like both sides going on at the same time because like it was kind of like a fest type event where you had like side A and side B. Sometimes it would just be like a dance hall on one side and then the metalheads on the other side.
I remember that. I remember the one side was more like a old school 2001 John Travolta disco. They probably could still pull out one of those big crystal balls, you know, and be spinning Bee Gees to
Right.
girls in, skin tight dresses. And the other side were guys in work boots, girls in work boots, and black t-shirts, right?
Good times, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
New York had a lot of awesome venues, and Jersey. I mean, there's what, Birch Hill. There's so many venues that closed down on both sides. So
Well, it's a great hotbed for music, and it's really, I mean, sure, Brooklyn's one of the boroughs, but it's still kind of like the suburbs, if that makes any sense, because you know the, all the bridge and tunnel babies would come across from Long Island or from New Jersey to go to L'Amour's or go to Lemoore East over in Queens in the early days. But I always thought that once you got out of the center of the city, you got more of the working class, and I think that the music that we played or the music that we would go see at L'Amour's spoke to the working class. It spoke to that part of society, which I was part of. So that's why it felt comfortable to be in that environment.
I love seeing you guys wherever you play. I watch you also on a boat. It was a good time.
A rowboat.
No, not quite that. Yeah. But I did, and when I was introducing you, right off the bat, I said hardest working band because even as a kid, all the way back then, I admired how much killer music Overkill was putting out. Scorched is your 20th album in the last, I guess, 38 years that you've been releasing music now and touring on it, making you and Dee Dee a nonstop machine of heavy metal creations, really. It's rare to see that kind of effort and ethic put into it. Is there any reason that you guys average, new music every 2 years or less at this point?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, you put, first and foremost, you put as much as you can into what you love. You have a family, and you're a family guy. You put all your love into the family. You don't want to neglect it. But we had a band, and this was kind of our baby. I mean, it was four of us at the beginning, but it morphed into two of us, and then found some guys that have hung around for over 20 years, like Dave Linsk or Derek Taylor, and adding Jason Bittner. So you put into it as much as you can. You want that opportunity. You want to raise the bar, even if you're raising the bar for yourself. Push the parameters out, not just be exactly the same from record to record. Be identifiable, but be different. And that's where the interest comes from year to years, is saying, I can't believe we have another opportunity, and to be able to, as I spoke of the working class, earlier. To be in that situation and have that working class mentality, I think that you make the most of the opportunity, and so it goes from record to record to record. So almost like on a cycle. So it's worked for us. It's kept us visible, kept us in the public eye, and kept us out on the road.
It's truly admirable, honestly. Like, again, I mean, the fact that you put out so much killer music throughout, your entire career is just, it's unfathomable, especially when you hear like, oh, the band, this is their first new record in 8 years or something like that. I'm like, well, Overkill put out 5 records in that time.
Well, there's also a business plan to it. Well, yeah, we had to be smart about it. We knew we weren't going to get the attention of a Metallica. Metallica changed the entire landscape of Kill 'Em All. They might have even changed it with their demo. I mean, but when Kill 'Em All came out, and then by the time they had been on like their fifth record, which was probably the Black Album by that time, I mean, they were a phenomenon. They didn't need to do what they had done necessarily in the early days with regard to schedule, because the schedule was for a thrash band was to keep yourself visible by playing, because people connect so much between the record and between that live show. It's like you saying, I saw you on WFO back then. It's unforgettable experience for me. Well, that made those WFO songs better for you, because you not only have the recorded version of it, but in your head you have seeing us live version of it. So we have to do that from record to record, to keep up the excitement level and to keep ourselves visible. So I mean, I always thought it was a good business plan, and obviously at this point it's worked almost 40 years. So who am I, right, to say that?
And it's not just quantity, but it's quality. What do you think is the secret behind making it interesting every time, and worth listening to?
Well, that's a great question, or a great pickup, because we talk about that in within our circle. And sure, we've had, I'm sure there's a couple of flubs out there. There's a couple of ones I'm like, oh, that could have been better. That kind of situation. But we always think about raising the bar. We always think about reinvesting in ourselves, whether that be, using a guy like Colin Richardson, who we've had great success with, using a guy like Terry Date in the early days, for Years of Decay and Horoscope. I mean, this is a great fucking producer. Went on to Pantera and did shit with Soundgarden, and was out of that Seattle scene. I mean, we never thought that was excessive, because investing in yourself to make good sound, we're making audible product, or audible from the business perspective, audible product. It's got to be the best it can fucking be. So when we're on the road, it's got to be visual product as well as audible product. So we have to bring in more lights, or we have to bring in bigger backdrops, or we have to bring in more amplification. So it's always about investing in yourself. And listen, we may not be the biggest, but in our heads, we think we are. So,
right. So I mean, with 20 albums, that means a lot of songs. That's not even including some of the smaller releases, EPs, and everything else you guys have. How do you always have material to write lyrics with? Do you find it challenging not to repeat yourself after 20 records?
That's another good pickup, because that's my biggest. It's not a fear, but it's the most tedious part of doing a record. Now there's a pool that you pull from. There's topic. We're obviously not writing about a sunshiny day unless it's to show contrast between, the dark and gloomy, even though we're not a dark and gloomy kind of a band. It's like we want to end up on the sunshiny day, but that's not going to be the topic of the song. So you have a pool that you pull from, and it's an aggressive type. But what I've always done with lyrics was use both sides of the equation to try to highlight the contrast between the dark and the light. You collect words like they're gems, and sometimes those words will sit somewhere in a box or in the back of your head, and you dust them off and say, it's time to reuse that. So I find that there's a very fine line between style and plagiarizing yourself. So I have to go through all this shit. Now, two, I'm lucky to have a guy like Dave in the band. This Dave is an absolute encyclopedia. This fucking guy hears a song one time, he knows where it came from, what year it was, and who did it. It's just that simple. And if he doesn't, he'll be back to you in 5 minutes, because it'll come to him. And I'll do like something on this record, did something, and I sent it to him. I'm like, am I like in territory I was in before? He's like, yeah, Good Night on the Electric Age, 2012.
Wow.
Thanks, bro. That's right. Now I'll go back and listen to it. So I use the resources at my disposal, and Dave is one of those resources, because he can just remember songs. He just has that photographic memory when it comes to playing and remembering where and when he heard something.
Wow, that's amazing. It's truly a talent, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I that makes sense, a lot of sense. immediately when I hear how many records you put out, I'm like, holy shit, okay, that's a lot of words. And especially, I'm sure even trying to prepare for a tour, you have to probably look back and rememorize songs because at some point they get lost.
I remember some fucking wise ass in the dressing room, one of the guys in the band, I forget. And I came in off one show, and I kept remembering that there was the word fire kept coming up, And I'm sitting there, and I took my shirt off, and I'm sitting there on the couch. I forget which guy it was. I'm having a beer, and I look at him and I go, "How many fucking times do you rhyme something with the word fire?" Right? He goes to me, "That must keep you in the muck and mire." Like fucking smart ass.
So you yourself really have done it all. You've lived through everything, even life-threatening health issues in the middle of a show. The Bobby Blitz who put out Feel the Fire back in 1985, do you think he would high five the Blitz of today or kick his ass?
Oh, jeez. What a great question. I might high five him to catch him off guard. Then kick his ass. Boy, it's been a great ride, though. That's the whole thing. I'm a firm believer in the fact that whatever you go through in life is what, I'm not going to say makes you stronger, but for sure makes you the person you are. So I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change anything. Would I like to not have had that happen? Of course. But for sure, it gave me a great understanding about what problems are. I mean, I've always had kind of one foot in the biker world, and rode with bunch of guys over the years. I mean, decades of, being on a motorcycle and wearing patches even for a while. But, I was sitting with a dude when this was going on, and I remember they used to call me Bandit because I always had to wear like a bandana over my face because I had all this mess underneath it and the sun couldn't hit it or it could reignite the issue. And I was sitting somewhere next to a river with this one dude. He was older than me. He goes, well, there are two sides to every fucking problem. See, the problem isn't the problem. It's getting through the problem. And when you get to the other side, you'll remember how you got through it, and it's going to help you in the future. And I thought to myself, that is some serious fucking words of wisdom, to a young guy who just wanted to create havoc back then. So I suppose the Bobby Blitz of today has collected all the information along that journey and all the experiences to be able to still do this, but do it from a more experienced perspective.
And spoken like a man of wisdom, many years later, who's been through it all.
You can go through life and be an absolute douchebag and a jerk off, but it doesn't get you anything except you're an absolute douchebag and a jerk off. If you pay attention to what people are saying and the help they give you, it gets you through the shit.
Yeah. Do you feel like these personal hardships that you've been through has helped or enhanced or changed, what you do career-wise in any way?
I was smoking until 10 years ago. I could care less. I swear to God, I mean, even these things I went through, I still thought I was bulletproof. You know what I mean? I still thought that, maybe they can wound me, but they can't kill me. And I always thought that, and I don't know if that's positive, or negative, or stupid, but it was, I suppose it didn't, I never had fear instilled in me. I never had the fear of it. I think that once I understood certain things, I always thought there's a way around it. And I realized I didn't deal the cards. So if this is the hand that gets me out of the game, so be it. But I just couldn't live. I couldn't live in a way of taking precautions based on the fact that based on fear. I just wasn't going to do that. This wasn't what this was about. And I suppose maybe that's to some degree why Overkill always appears like the real deal. That we're just, we're maybe we're the cockroaches that you can't kill after a nuclear war. But the fucking point is, is that we kind of believe that to some degree. And sure, I mean, it's going to all end someday. I mean, I get it. I'm not a fucking idiot. I know I have less time in front of me than I have behind me. But the point is that if I'm still living the way I did on that journey and collecting that information, it's going to be a good rest of the amount of time. So.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're having fun and you're doing exactly what you want to do. And what more could you really ask for in life? So.
running around like a juvenile delinquent for 40 fucking years. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right. It could be so much worse. I am curious. I know, current interviews always want to talk about the newest album and everything, and we'll get back to that. But really, of 20 albums, do you have one that is still to this day like the special one and near and dear to your heart to you?
Well, yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, there's chapters in the band's history, and I like looking at those chapters to see, what followed it. And I understand that the Years of Decay was the end of a chapter, and then Horoscope was the beginning of a new chapter, which I thought was kind of cool. And that's due to the fact that the songwriting had changed with regard to the people that were doing the songwriting. Bobby Gustafson, I'm speaking of specifically. So I always think of Horoscope as something of a start of the new chapter. I always think of Feel the Fire as the beginning of the whole journey. I mean, that was some great angst from some young men who were supposed to be angry at that particular time in their life, and created some kind of punk rock meets heavy metal vibe. I mean, for ourselves anyway. And then I love From the Underground and Below. I mean, that's a record to me and that was a Colin Richardson record, who's also done Scorched. Um, Colin Richardson, Chris Clancy on this record. But it was something special about the record. It seemed like a complete platter to me. It seemed like when I was a kid, I always wanted, whenever I put on a Sabbath record, I put it on from start to finish. I didn't just listen to Children of the Grave. I went from the beginning to the end, flipped it over. I needed the time to listen to it. And I think that From the Underground kind of represents that old school vibe, that it's cohesive to each other. And probably the last one would be Ironbound. I won't talk about Scorched that way because I mean it's just too new. I just don't think it's fair to put it on some type of a pedestal in my discography because I don't know what it's going to bring. I mean, I like the record, but I mean the Ironbound record to me, everybody said to me, "Oh, it's like a comeback." I said, "It's not a comeback, man. It's an absolute reflection of how healthy the metal scene got in 2010. There were darker days before that where it was just unpopular. It didn't mean that we were going to stop playing it, but it was 2010 turned the corner, and it wasn't just us, but there was a bunch of bands that put out, valuable pieces of fucking real estate, and it was
Right.
a great reflection of the scene around the world. It was like all of a sudden it was unified again and at a larger level, and I think that reflection of that strength showed in that record.
I mean, all of that sounds like such a beautiful thing to have that many chapters in your career, in your life. Like again, what more could you ask for? You did mention Colin Richardson, and if I'm not mistaken, you guys actually went to him. You average using him like once a decade or something like that.
Uh, that would be the average, yeah. If we're 4 decades around, we've used them 4 times.
Right.
Underground, Bloodletting, Killbox, and now Scorched.
Is there a reason that you like continuously come back to him, or what was the story of you guys coming back, to him for Scorched at least?
Well, it's that whole raising the bar thing. I mean, you want variety between the sounds of the record. You don't want them always the same. But Colin makes great records. And if we talk about Ironbound being a reflection of a great scene, one of the best sounding records we ever did was Killbox in 2003 with Colin, or four, I guess. But he manned the board from soup to nuts. He went from the recording of the drums all the way through to the end of the vocals. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's the result. It's not about when the record came out. And that wasn't the most popular days of that shit. And I think that sometimes that record gets a little bit lost in the shuffle, but the sound of it is amazing. So going back to Colin after that many years, so what are we talking now? 19 years later, we're going back to Colin Richardson. It's like revisiting your past, but you can go home again because he's progressed. We've progressed. We've tried to raise the bar. So for me, thinking of Colin, I only have positive memories in my head and even a positive present with what he did with Scorched. I mean, I saw what he was doing with this record. I'm like, what is he doing? And I can't use the word organic because it's not. It's because there's that digital modern punch to it. But he used drum resonance from a drum room and mixed it in with that punch correctly. scooped the guitar out to make it reminiscent of the 1990s or the early 90s. Brought back the clank in Dee Dee's bass, which is like, I mean, that is like, if there's a fucking characteristic of Overkill that you could mention, that's for sure one of them. It's his bass.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so all this shit came back. So when I put this record on, I put Scorched on, I'm like, I'm listening to it in the current day, but I'm also remembering an era that has gone by, but it has a fresh coat of paint on it. And that's due specifically to Colin and Chris, taking over the reins on this record.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because since the early 90s, I've been telling people that Overkill has 2 guitar players and a lead bass player. And from what I understand, Scorched has been done for a while now, right? Like, we went through a series of postponements, I think, for the last couple of years. Was that all COVID, or was there other things involved?
No, it's just COVID. We wanted a tour as soon as we could release it, and we just weren't sure back in, a year ago in 2022. We went out and did a tour, but we did that, on the fly kind of a thing. We booked the shows, we went out there, we toured. It was like a 3-month advance. We couldn't get the fucking record together for that. But it wasn't 100% done. And I kind of, I attribute the results of the record to the fact that, I had almost 3 years to work on this. I got the demo right on the shutdown. It was the 12th of March, 2020. And the demo was now on my computer on that tour. We were in North Carolina at a place called the Fillmore, and that was it. The fucking world shut down. So Dee Dee had a skeletal demo that he handed to all of us, but by that June, Jason had done the drums. He had finished everything, so it started taking shape, and we were targeting April 21 for the release. But then when this whole fucking crazy Peter Pandemic shit kept going more and more and more, it's a shutdown in June. Oh, don't go see your fucking family on the 4th of July. Right. You know what I'm saying, right? Don't see your family next Christmas. I'm like, fuck this. We got to do this when we tour. And I started tearing that fucking thing apart. It was the only sanity amongst the insanity in my house. I was living by myself. Nuts. And I was like, this fucking record is depressing. I'm like listening to everything I put on there. I just tore the shit out of it. I said, it's got to be an Overkill record. And eventually it became that, but I was writing Colin's mixing in November and December of last year. I was still sending him tracks. I would go down to the studio that I use with this cat, Johnny. And I'd say, I want to change this. I want to change that. I want to change this. And I think that's why the record got the results that it did, is that I had that much extra time, much more than the other guys.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that your original lyrics were too depressing, and then you leered off of that. What are you going to do with those original lyrics? Like, you ever going to use it for a different project or anything like that?
I don't know. I've saved bits and pieces through the whole thing, but I wanted something that was reflective of me. If you've been listening to us since WFO or saw us play live at Lemoore or WFO, I think that's not the kind of dude I am. It's not the kind of band this is. It wasn't a good representation. Right. It was a representation under extreme adverse circumstances. So that's why the teardown. It went from submission to pushback. You know what I mean? It went from submission to dominance. And me in a submissive state is not me. You know what I mean? I'm not this dominant dude of like, I have to be the fucking, alpha male king of the fucking jungle. I'm not that. But I'm not the fucking, you know what I'm saying? I'm not the prey either. So,
right.
So the point is that I had to see where I was to know where I was going. And that's how, I got these results. The Surgeon was a title all the way from the beginning, but I just changed the whole thing from acceptance to pushback. It became positive energy over the course of that 2.5 years.
So, because this has been one of the longest stretches that you've had as a band, do you already have songs written for the next record?
No, we work in groups of 10. That's all we know. Don't confuse us. We're not artists. You know what I'm saying? We're like craftsmen. We make tables. We're just trying to make a better table every fucking year. We're mechanics.
Right. I love that.
Don't
So,
confuse us.
so you and Dee Dee have been at it together since the beginning, and these days, even two original members is a big thing, to keep it together. What do you think is the secret, and how you and Dee Dee keep it together all that time?
Well, believe it or not, we don't put the band first. I think that that's really the secret of it. That if you have that kind of a relationship, I mean, it's not like I send him flowers and take him out to dinner on his birthday, but we don't put the band first. We put the families first. I mean, it's always been the way it is. When this shit kind of happened or something else happened, like we were talking before, the first thing was not like, oh, we got to cancel the tour. The first thing's like, what do you need? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that there's a huge amount of trust when it comes to that. That everything else falls into place if you're comfortable with the person that you're working with. Every fucking thing. Then there is no problems you can't get through if there's two guys that are thinking in those, in those terms. And I remember, it's funny. I mean, these are the kind of people that you deal with Overkill. I met Dee Dee. He showed up at a fucking rehearsal or something back in like the early 80s. It must have been 1980. He shows up, it's fucking 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The guy shows up with no shirt on and a fucking dog collar, right? He's got fucking hair out to here. He's wearing a leather jacket and fucking leather pants, right? Pair of Converse or ripped jeans or something, right? And I'm looking at the guitar player who we invited him and drummer Rat up, and they're both all dressed up. And I go, this is the way fucking people dress at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But the next day I met his wife, who he's still married to. So the point is that there's a commitment here of, and she said to me years later, she became very successful at what she does. And she's written periodicals and has a very high education when it comes to understanding people. And she said, it works for you too, because you have exactly the same fucking background. You care about your brothers and sisters. You care about your parents. You care about your family. You care about, that's why it works. He came from, he's third generation Italians, third generation Irish. I mean, it's big fucking families and it's big Christmases and it's important you're at your mother's birthday. so this is the way we were brought up. That's why it works this many years.
That's amazing, man. That's great to hear. And I
It's
think
just like, yeah, because it's cool.
right, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people think of, I mean, of course, like a band is like a marriage, it's just like a family. So, it's great to hear that after all that time, you guys aren't like trying to kill each other, but actually respect each other still. It's a big.
It's huge. And, I don't think we've argued. We've argued and disagreed. I don't think voices were raised more than one time between he and I over all this time. And I think another thing, and I would always tell a band to do this, if they were a younger band. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing. Out of disagreement can come great fucking ideas. It can spawn and light a whole new direction that you didn't see. But do it behind closed doors. Don't let the whole fucking world know you're disagreeing. And people do that. It's the fucking era of social media now for a fucking entire generation. And I gotta know when people are taking a shit, when their dog has fucking diarrhea, when their wife left them. I mean, they're letting all these fucking people know this shit. Keep those fucking secrets to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Present yourself in one voice when you come out of that room.
Right, absolutely. And I think you're one of the only bands that came out of the East Coast and still there, because everybody kind of like picked up, went west to some degree. A lot of your counterparts in New York and Jersey. Was there never an interest to leave? It was always just like, this is where we are, this is who we are.
Well, that's also part of it. I mean, this is where my family is. So, my mom had lived until last year. I mean, she went in COVID, not because of COVID, but I record by my mother's house so that I could stop by and have dinner. You know what I mean? So it was never me going to Florida. Maybe now, maybe my parents are gone, but and they'd probably be jealous that I went down there. But
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I never thought of it. I mean, I like where I live. I live in Northwest Jersey, man. I mean, I'm like out in the woods and on top of a mountain, and nobody bothers me. I can play music as loud as I fucking want, and fucking take the pipes off my bike and make it as loud as I fucking want. I just kind of dig it. I dig the Jersey vibe.
I know that you have, of course, been a staple of metal for so long now. Do you actually get into newer bands and what they're doing?
Well, not what I'm recording. You know, I mean, obviously, I'm doing something right now with Mike Portnoy and Demel and Mark Mengy again, and I know that Mike's son Max was playing with Code Orange out of Pittsburgh, so I gave that all that shit we listened to recently. Sometimes when there's like some schism on the I always go through the news, like the blabbermouth news, to see who's recording, to see that, oh, maybe we could hook up with these guys. Oh, Armored Saints in the studio, that would be a great tour. Who wants to tour this and that. But sometimes there's some schism in there between so and so and so and so, and I go, oh, I haven't heard of that band yet. I recently got turned on to Falling in Reverse. I've been using them in interviews and stuff. I mean, it's not really 100% my shit, but I absolutely admire the fact that they're taking a fucking flag and putting this back in arenas, at a high fucking level. I mean, I think that that's just fucking amazing. That it's that a band like that, and they're obviously not new. They've worked themselves up to this point. But that's how I get exposed to stuff. But usually when I'm recording, I try not to go to those places. I just try to go inside my head and go to kind of the library I've had of what I've learned in the past.
Bobby, thank you so much for your time and killing time with me today. Everybody, Scorched is out this April. It's a fucking blistering, amazing record. Make sure you pick it up. It's going to blow your mind. And Bobby, I mean, congratulations on 20 albums and so many years and everything in between, man.
Good save with that
Right?
mic. Good
Yeah.
save.
You would know.